The cabin is the size of a large closet. It smells of ozone, sweat, and metallic dust. Outside its incredibly thin walls there is nothing but the absolute vacuum of space. Inside, two men stand side by side, harnessed to the floor, staring through triangular windows at an alien landscape rushing up to meet them. They are 240,000 miles from home. They are falling toward a barren ocean of impact craters and shattered gray rock, and they are running out of fuel. Suddenly, a piercing alarm shatters the concentrated silence in their headsets. The guidance computer is overloading. Yellow caution lights flash across the control panels. Below them, the surface of the moon is approaching too fast. Through the small window, the commander sees that the computer is steering their fragile ship directly into a massive crater surrounded by boulders the size of houses. If they hit the rocks, the ship will tear apart. If they abort and fire the ascent engine, they will be thrown back into orbit, a failed mission, assuming they even survive the violent maneuver. If they do nothing, they will crash in seconds. Millions of miles away, the entire world holds its breath, listening to the crackling radio transmission. But in the tiny vibrating cabin, there is only the cold reality of the falling ship. The commander does what he has trained his whole life to do. He takes the controls. He steers away from the boulders, flying horizontally across a lifeless world, searching for a flat patch of dust. The fuel gauge drops. 60 seconds remaining. 30 seconds. The descent engine is kicking up a massive sheet of gray dust, obscuring his vision. He is flying blind. If stories of journeys into the unknown and human limits fascinate you, consider subscribing to Wonders and Frontiers. We explore the furthest edges of the map and the people who dare to cross them. For thousands of years, humanity looked up at the silver sphere in the night sky. It was a god, a calendar, a myth, a lantern for sailors lost at sea. It was the ultimate untouchable frontier. But over a single decade, an impossible ambition consumed the brightest minds on Earth. The goal was no longer just to observe the moon, but to touch it, to stand on its surface and look back at the world we came from. The threshold to this new world was violent. It required strapping human beings to the top of a towering metal structure filled with highly explosive rocket fuel, creating a controlled eruption powerful enough to tear through the atmosphere and escape the gravitational pull of the Earth. The Saturn V rocket was a monolith of fire and thunder, shaking the ground for miles. When it broke through the sky, it carried 3 men into the deep, unforgiving silence of the void. Among them was Neil Armstrong. He was not a man of loud bravado. He was an engineer, a test pilot, a man who understood the intricate language of machines. He possessed a rare, quiet focus. In a crisis, when the world spun out of control, his heart rate barely changed. He was the kind of man you wanted at the controls when the margin between survival and disaster was measured in seconds. The journey across the great expanse took 3 days. 3 days of floating in a small metallic capsule, watching the Earth shrink to a fragile blue marble suspended in an endless ocean of black. It is a profound isolation. Beyond the thin walls of their ship, there was no air, no pressure, no warmth. Just a freezing void that would boil the blood and freeze the lungs in an instant. When they finally reached lunar orbit, the true danger began. Armstrong and his co-pilot, Buzz Aldrin, crawled into the lunar module, a strange, angular spacecraft wrapped in gold foil and black panels. It was named the Eagle. It did not look like a sleek rocket. It looked like a mechanical insect. It was built for only one environment. It had no heat shield, no aerodynamic curves, because there is no air on the moon. Its walls were milled down to the thickness of a few sheets of aluminum foil to save weight. If you dropped a heavy tool on the floor, it could punch a hole straight through to the vacuum of space. This frail machine detached from the command module, leaving their third crewmate, Michael Collins, to orbit alone in the darkness. The Eagle began its long descent. Now, hovering just feet above the lunar surface, the dust is flying wildly. The warning lights are still flashing. The fuel is almost gone. Back in mission control, engineers grip their consoles, knuckles white, staring at telemetry data. In the cabin, Armstrong's eyes dart between the instruments and the window. He ignores the alarms. He ignores the fuel warnings. He gently manipulates the thrusters. The ship glides over the shadow of a crater. The dust is moving so fast it creates an optical illusion, making it hard to tell how fast they are moving or in what direction. Then a blue light flashes on the dashboard. A long metal probe dangling from the landing gear has touched the ground. A voice crackles over the radio. Contact light, the engine cuts out, the massive ship drops the last few feet with a heavy thud. Absolute silence. The violent vibration stops. The hissing of the thrusters ceases. The dust outside, unhindered by any atmosphere, settles instantly to the ground. Inside the cabin, 2 men in bulky white suits look at each other. They have done it. The tension of the last harrowing minutes drains away, replaced by the profound, shocking realization of where they are. "Houston, Tranquility Base here," Armstrong says, his voice remarkably calm. "The Eagle has landed." But landing was only the beginning. The great unknown lay just outside the fragile door. They did not step out immediately. They spent hours inside, checking systems, preparing the delicate equipment, and strapping into their massive life support backpacks. These suits were miniature spaceships, providing oxygen, regulating temperature against extreme heat and cold, and protecting them from deadly radiation. Finally, they depressurized the cabin. The hiss of escaping oxygen faded into silence. Armstrong grabbed the handle of the hatch and pulled. It opened into the glaring, harsh light of a completely alien world. He backed out slowly, moving clumsily in the heavy suit, fitting his massive boots onto the rungs of the ladder. He climbed down into the shadow of the spacecraft. The environment outside was unlike anything human eyes had ever processed. On Earth, the sky is blue because the atmosphere scatters the sunlight. Here, there was no atmosphere. The sky was an abyss of absolute black, even though the sun was blazing with intense, blinding light. The ground was an endless expanse of gray, resembling wet sand or powdered charcoal. The shadows were completely pitch dark, a stark, terrifying contrast. Armstrong stood on the footpad of the landing gear. He looked down at the pale dust. He described it over the radio, testing it with his boot. It was fine, like powder. Then he let go of the ladder. He shifted his weight, moving his left foot away from the metal pad, and pressed it into the ancient, undisturbed dust of the moon. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. It was a moment that transcended borders, politics, and the wars raging far away on Earth. For a brief, flickering moment in human history, hundreds of millions of people huddled around glowing television sets, united in pure awe. They were watching a human being walk on another world. Armstrong moved carefully in the strange gravity. Every step felt light, floating, almost dreamlike. The dust stuck to his boots. He looked down at the footprint he had just made. It was sharp, perfectly defined. Because there is no wind, no rain, and no weather on the moon, that single footprint will remain there for millions of years. It is a permanent fossil of human ambition. Together, the two astronauts explored the stark landscape. They collected rocks that had lain untouched since the birth of the solar system. They planted a flag, rigid with wire, so it would appear to fly in the airless void. They took photographs of their fragile ship, their long shadows, and the desolate beauty surrounding them. But perhaps the most powerful moment was not looking at the moon, but looking away from it. Hanging in the infinite black sky was the Earth. It looked impossibly small, a vibrant sphere of blue oceans and white swirling clouds, standing completely alone in the darkness. Every human being who had ever lived, every empire that had risen and fallen, every joy and suffering existed on that fragile little marble. From the desolate, lifeless surface of the moon, the Earth looked like an oasis. The journey to the moon was a triumph of mathematics, engineering, and sheer courage, but it was also a profound shift in perspective. When the astronauts fired their ascent engine, leaving the surface behind, they left a plaque on the landing leg of the Eagle. It read, "We came in peace for all mankind." The command module carried them back across the great void, plunging into the fiery heat of the Earth's atmosphere, and splashing down safely in the Pacific Ocean. They returned as heroes, but they brought back something far more valuable than rocks. They brought back the absolute proof that humanity is not confined to the ground we were born on. The footprints they left in the gray dust still remain, waiting in the deep silence of the lunar surface. They are a testament to the time we built a ship of thin metal and fire, crossed the terrible expanse of space, and touched the face of the unknown. They remind us that our boundaries are only as narrow as our courage, and that the greatest frontiers still lie ahead.